Welcome class to your first lecture video on Chapter 1, Explore the Dreamweaver Workspace. I thought I'd start out this video just by pointing out where your lecture notes will be posted as well as this video that I'm recording. So as you read through Chapter 1, I think it's a very good practice to open up the PowerPoint that corresponds to the chapter so that you can see what I've kind of pulled out as important concepts as you read through the chapter. I spent some time updating this last evening, and so some of the material will correspond to the new version of Dreamweaver, and it will kind of not correspond so much to the textbook. And so we live in that world of where technology is kind of outdating what may be in print, and so that's just the way some of these chapters will have to kind of run. So coming back, I'm just going to jump into Dreamweaver. I'm not going to go through pages 1-7 or 1-8 because that's just simply opening up Dreamweaver. Now if you're on a Windows system or a Mac, it's just a different process for opening up Dreamweaver. I do want to talk about page 1-9. I'm not going to step through some of these steps, line by line. Maybe just cover them in an overview. Sometimes I will go line by line, so it really depends on the complexity of the task that is at hand. So change view and view panels. The thing with Creative Cloud 2017 is that the view is not in the same area as it was in 2015 and 2016. So it's just positioned differently. They still behave the same way. It's just where you access them. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a file that we'll be opening up later on in the chapter. And with regards to the data files, you want to use the syllabus and the directions to go ahead and download those data files. So the very first data file that we're going to open up, so once you've downloaded your data, they're going to be listed in chapters. And so inside of Chapter 1, they'll have different file names like DW1_1. So you really want to pay attention to the underscore and then the number that follows it. Of course, the 1 here in the front corresponds to Chapter 1. So when you get into Chapter 2, it's going to say DW2 and then _1 and so on. So this one they want us to open up 1_1. And the reason I'm doing this is so I can show you the different views. Okay, so on page 1-7, or actually 1-9, excuse me, they talk about change view and view panel. So you have to actually have a document open in order to be able to see the different views, and that makes sense once I talk about them here. So this is code view. Okay, so we'll be spending some time inside code view because it's very important for you to understand some of the code that's behind these pages that are built. Okay, so this is source code. And in the chapter, they also talk about the related files toolbar, and that's this one right here. So the HTML file is this one, but here is all the related files that make this web page work through styling and even through interactivity. So depending on which one you're on, depends on what code you will see. And this comes important to play when we get into using like the CSS Designers panel. It's always important that we're in the right file on the related files toolbar. So that is code view. Split view is going to take us into what we used to call or what we still call design view here on the top, and you can drag this out so you can make it larger on top. You can really position these as to how you want them to be. Now some people feel really comfortable, and depending on your monitor size and your resolution, split view might be the best way to go about it. Now the next view is live view. Now we're not seeing design view because in order to see design view in version 2016 and 2017, we actually have to remove some code that's inside of striped_styles.css. So let me take you there real quick, so before I forget to tell you how to remove that. And it has to do with lines 15 through 28. So kind of memorize those lines in your mind, 15 through 28, because you'll have to do this for your other websites too, such as Blooms and Bulbs and TripSmart. And so 15 through 28, it's not boilerplate that we touch, it's the style sheet that corresponds to the website. So I would delete lines 15 through 28. Okay, just delete them. I can take some couple spacings away. And then the trick is that you have to do a file save, and then you have to close that file out and then open it up again. And now live view becomes a toggle. It's a live and design view. So design view is much friendlier to work in than say live view is. And we'll get into a chapter where we work with live view, but that's probably not until like chapter 8, 7, something like that. So most of the time we'll be here in design view. And again, if you feel more comfortable working in split view, then go ahead and do that. So that's with regards to the views that are talked about on 1-9. Then it gets into page 10 where it talks about the insert panel and the files panel. So located on the right side of your screen, and depending on how you have your workspace viewed, depends on where these are positioned. Now across the top is called the application toolbar. This is called the document toolbar. And then we have a coding toolbar, and we have all these panels over here, or they'll call them panes. And you'll see that as you read through chapter 1. So up here on the application toolbar we have workspace views. So we have standard and developer, and depending on what version you are in Creative Cloud or even older Dreamweaver versions, some had a lot of different workspaces. You can even set up your own workspace. So if you get where you've kind of docked your panels where you want them to be, you can go ahead and save that workspace. And so it would be under new workspace. So whenever something goes wrong, you can always reset where you need to be. And so this is the default for standard. So up here on the top I have the files panel. This is the panel that you're going to work in with regards to managing your websites. So I'll go through the process of defining striped umbrellas so you can see that process and then apply it to Blooms, into TripSmart, and into your coffee shop website. The DOMS panel down here, we usually typically do not work with it a lot in this course in CIS 230. It just gives you a hierarchy of how everything is kind of nested within the document. We will talk about the assets panel as we go through this course, and we have some snippets that we can use as well, code that's already created for us, and we just actually apply it to our page. So if this panel is getting in your way, you can always close a tab group. If you accidentally do that, or if you purposely do it, you always go to your window menu to bring it back. So if I click on DOM, it's going to bring back what I just closed out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close that because I'm not going to use that for chapter 1. Another important thing to do with the files panel is this little box right here. And if I hover over it, it says expand to show local and remote sites. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And over here is my remote server view. So this is going to be your CIS, your BSC CIS server. And this over here is going to be your local view, whether that be a flash drive, an external hard drive, or just your hard drive on your computer. Now you want to click on this icon right here to go ahead and connect. And I'm not connected at this point for this other course that you see viewed here as the actual site. To collapse back down, you can click on the upper X, or you can go ahead and click on the collapse to show only local and remote site. So I tend to avoid using this drop-down menu, toggling back and forth, because sometimes I think I'm in one view and I'm actually in the other, and then I do some damage. So I always like to expand and be here when I'm uploading, downloading files, and things like that. So kind of get in the habit of using it in that way. So that is your files panel. The other panel that's talked about on page 10 is your insert panel. So in the insert panel, we're going to be working with the HTML category heavily until we get to around chapter 9, which I think is your last chapter, and then we'll work with forms. So everything is going to come from this. So when you're reading through the textbook, keep in mind that the textbook was written for version 2015 or 14 of Creative Cloud, and now we're sitting in 2017. So there are going to be a little bit of differences, and I'll try to update you and let you know of those differences along the way. So that's the Insert Panel tab, Files Panel tab. Talked about the workspaces, which is talked about on 11. Another thing, you can dock or undock panels. So if I hold down my left mouse button, and this is a Windows environment, and I drag, you see the blue line there? That's undocking this. So if I want to undock that, I can. Now if I want to dock it back, I just hold it and bring it back until hopefully I get a blue line. I'm not really good at this. So this is where I would go up here and I would say reset standard. So typically you don't undock. I mean, you can grab one of these individual ones too, and you'll probably want to do this with the CSS Designer panel when we get into that, where you undock it and then you make it into its two columns. Okay, another thing I want to talk about before we continue on past page 11 is how you view or just the different color schemes with regards to Dreamweaver. If you go to your edit menu and then click down to preferences, you will see under category, if you go to interface, you have all of these differences. So I'm sitting on the light gray. This is the brightness of the work area. So you just want to play around with these. Find what works best for you working inside of Dreamweaver. I actually like the darker ones, but working in the classroom and putting it through the display to the board doesn't work really well with the dark colors. View a web page and use help. So I already have the web page open that's talked about on page 14. Again, make sure you take the time to get those data files downloaded. You can hide your panels as well, and it's as simply as F4 on your keyboard, and that'll hide your panels, and if you hit F4 again, it'll bring them back. You can bring in any panel that you want or hide them through your Windows menu. So remember, if you lose anything, go to your Windows menu. Coming into page 16 talks about Dreamweaver Help. So if we go to Help and we go to Help and Support and then Dreamweaver Online Help, we can click that and have this open up into Adobe Dreamweaver Learn and Support. Now I picked a different topic than they have in the book on page 16, just simply because it's not laid out the same as it was, say, 2 years ago. So, and that's typical of websites. So I put CSS Designer panel in here. And I search, and so then I get information on the CSS Designer panel. It gives us some tutorials, how to use the CSS Designers panel, and so a lot of different things that come directly from Adobe. So don't be afraid and don't forget to use your Adobe help as you're working through this course as well. Then we get into the next section, which I'm actually going to jump to the PowerPoint for, because it's plan and set up a website. And so let's see if I can quickly get to that section. Here it is, plan and set up a website. So planning a website is complex. It's one that requires careful planning. They have this figure on page 18, develop a plan, create the basic structure, create the content, test, modify, publish, test, modify, publish, modify, publish, test. You know, you have all of these different, and those bottom three, they just kind of become sometimes a circle. As to when you update something, you have to test it, and then you go ahead and publish it, and it's kind of a circle in that way. So we'll use this as our guide as we look at Coffee Shop and do some questions, answering questions. And so in your instructions for Coffee Shop, if I jump over to the course shell and take you to the assignments page and jump down to Portfolio Builder, which is Coffee Shop. Now you don't get the privilege of picking the topic as it's stated in the book. Everyone's going to do a coffee shop for this course. And so here's the topic, and then here's the information with it. So we're going to do a wireframe or a storyboard. required in number 3 should include 6 pages and not 4. So what I want you to do is I want you to Google storyboard, website storyboard. And what you should find is where you create little graphical images with regards to or representing each individual page in a website. Okay? And so that's what I'm looking for in that one. And then it says questions. So submit both the storyboard and question answers from number 2. And the examples are on page 119. Okay, so if you look at page 119, you see question, who is the target audience? So you're a coffee shop, okay, and it can be, coffee shops can cover a lot of things beyond just coffee. So your example for that, it says seniors, teens, and children. So what is your target audience with regards to your website for your coffee shop? How can I tailor the site to reach the audience? Okay, so this one says specify an appropriate reading level, decide the optimal amount of media content, use formal or casual language. So it might be using appropriate colors, providing kind of like a sales pitch maybe on the front page. You know, lots of different ideas you can come up with that. What are the goals for the site? Is it to sell a product or to provide information? Okay, get your name out there, those kind of things. How will I gather the information? What are my sources for media content? Now the last 5, what is your budget? We don't have a budget. So not all of these questions have to be answered. What is the timeline? Well, our timeline is their semester. Okay. Who is my project team? Hey, that's you. Okay. And number 9, how often should the site be updated? Okay, so typically we want to make sure our sites update at least once every 2 weeks, if not weekly, with some new information. And then who will update the site? There will be most likely you. So again, not all of those questions have to be answered along with the storyboard that will be submitted. So the storyboard can be created in Microsoft Word. It can be created in Illustrator. There are storyboard creators out there, and so just kind of Google, figure out what you're going to do with regards to the storyboard. But Google website storyboard so that you can get examples of what storyboards look like before you go actually and create your storyboard. Okay, so jumping back to the PowerPoint, these are all those questions that I just went through. So it says here, a wireframe, sometimes referred to as a storyboard, is an illustration that represents every page in a website. The home page is called the parent page. You can just call it home page. And the pages linked to it are called child pages. Okay, so let's jump back into, and there's an example of it on page 1-20 as well. Okay, sometimes they call it wireframe in the book. I call it a storyboard. Page 22. So it says select the location for your website. I'm going to use my desktop. You can use a flash drive, you can use an external hard drive, you can use your hard drive. And so I'm going to step through setting up Striped Umbrella as the website inside of Dreamweaver. So I'm just going to go to the site menu, and then I'm going to click on New Site, and I'm going to enter in Striped Umbrella. Now how you label your site name, that's totally up to you. It doesn't have to have the restrictions of no spaces, no punctuation, those kind of things as folder names do. So my next step is I'm going to map to my local site folder. So I'm going to click and I'm going to navigate to my desktop, and I'm in Windows 7. So Windows 10 or Mac users are going to go through this process a little differently. I'm going to click on New Folder, and I'm going to type in Striped _umbrella, and I use all lowercase for my folder names. When you do a space between a word, you want to make sure you use underscore. So don't name your folders for this class with spaces in them, use underscores. And try to keep them all lowercase. It's just a good naming convention. So I click on Striped Umbrella and I select folder, and now I have through my path to desktop to Striped Umbrella. And this is my local site information. So it says here you'll select the local folder and a name for your Dreamweaver site. So where locally am I going to work on it? And it describes it up here a little bit more. two parts: a local folder on your computer where you store and work on files, and a remote folder on a server where you post the same files to the web. Okay, so the next step beyond that is to set up the server. So I'm now on page 25. So I'm going to go ahead and click on servers in the left hand, and then I'm going to click on the plus sign, and I'm going to type in BSC CIS server. Now if I was working with another server like GoDaddy, I would type GoDaddy there. It's just a label to give to that server, nothing to do with how it functions. The FTP address is 165.234.48.113. Okay, username, and this will be sent out to you through an email, is your first name dot last name. So in my case, it would be something like this, at cis.bismarckstate.edu, and then I would put in my password. Now it just happens that I don't have my first name as my username, it's just my last name, but you will have first name dot last name. And then you want to make sure that you click on test, and you want to make sure you get the Dreamweaver connected to the web server successfully. Now your password is going to be a lot more complex in detail, because that's what we do here, is make sure that everything is secure. This root directory we want to leave empty until we have all of our websites defined, and then we can go ahead and create folders and then come back in and fill them in. So I'm going to click on save, and I'm going to click save, and then I'm going to expand my files panel, and I'm going to connect. Now you're going to see a whole bunch of list of folders because I have a lot on the server. Do I have a Stripe and Umbrella folder? Yes, I do. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Blooms folder too. I'm going to delete that. TripSmart, delete. So I'm just selecting the folder and hitting delete, and you have those permissions as well. So yours up here will say your first name dot last name. You're going to right click on your root folder, and you're going to click on new folder, and you're going to type in Stripe and Umbrella. I always try to make them the same as what I named them locally, and as far as the folder name is. And then the next step while you're here is you can go and then type in Blooms. I gotta delete my coffee shop one too. Right click, and this is all on your root folder, your first name dot last name. I'll turn it in TripSmart. And then one more, coffee shop. Now you can put an underscore in between those two words if you want. Okay, so now I have Stripe and Umbrella, Blooms, TripSmart, and Coffee Shop. These become my root folders, so that when I upload website information for Stripe and Umbrella, it goes to Stripe and Umbrella folder, Blooms to Blooms, and so on. So the next step is to collapse back down, and then I can go to Site, Manage Sites. I'm going to click on Stripe and Umbrella if it's not selected already, and then click on the Edit. Come to Servers. I can double click the server name, and then I'm going to type in Striped underscore Umbrella. And click on Test to make sure that I've typed it correctly. And then Save, Save, Done. And then I'm going to go back and make sure that I mapped it correctly. So I expand, I connect again, and now I see just first name dot last name, and then the Stripe and Umbrella folder. So you're going to do the same process for Blooms as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and just try Blooms. So I'm going to go to Site, and I can do it through here, or I can collapse down, and I'm going to say New Site. So I type in Blooms, and you can say Blooms and Bulbs if you like. I'm going to navigate to where I'm going to store my files locally. New folder. Oh, I already have a Blooms folder, so let me delete this one. Here's Blooms. Servers. Add. BSC CIS server 165.234.48.113. Username at cis.bismarckstate.edu. and then your password. Now, since I have the folders already created, I can just type in Blooms and click on Test, and voila, I have now the Blooms website created. So if I click this drop down arrow, I can see all of my websites that I've created and toggle in between them and work with them in that way. So I'm going to collapse back down when I go to Striped Umbrella. Okay, so now I'm on page 28. So it says add a folder to a website. So we're going to right click right here, and we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to type in assets. Okay, assets is where we're going to store all of our images. Okay, 1-29 says to set up the default images folder to this folder. So let's see if I can do it this way. If I double click Striped Umbrella, no. See, that used to be what we could do in older versions. Now I can click here and I can click on Manage Sites. And then click on Edit. We want to go to Advanced Settings. And then navigate to the Assets folder that we just created. So you want to watch up here as to which folder you're in. And select. And then click on Save. Why is that important? So it is important that when I pull an image into a web page from my data files, that it automatically copies it to the assets folder just by me pulling it in from the data files. If I don't have that default images folder set up, it will not map the image correctly, and then when you upload to the server, it's going to have an absolute path trying to find that image, and I can't see your hard drive, and no web server can, from a server. Okay, so make sure you set your default images folder for all of your websites. So let's try that for Blooms. So I click on Blooms. Here I have images. Let's go ahead and just rename that. So Blooms, Manage Sites, click on Edit, Advanced Settings, navigate, just make sure you're in the right folder here when you select your Assets folder, and then click on Save. So again, make sure you do that process for all of your websites. Create the home page on page 30. So open DW1_2. So I'm going to go ahead and close this one. Navigate to my data files. DW1_2. And then it says to save it as index in step number 2. So File, Save As. I need to navigate to my Striped Umbrella local root folder. So that's on my desktop. Then I'm going to go to Striped Umbrella. And then I'm going to rename this to be Index. Do not put it in the Assets folder because it's not an image. Okay, so just write in Striped Umbrella. And then when it says update links, this is so important. Okay, so if you hear anything in this whole video, this is probably the most important thing. So in number 3 it says click Save and then select No when asked to update links. Why did it do that? Oh, I know why. Because we don't have these files copied over yet. Okay, so this should happen to you with a white screen. So the next step on page 31 is that we need to copy the supporting related files. So boilerplate, SU styles, and respawn. If I come over to my Striped Umbrella website in my files panel, I see that I have index. Okay, but I do not have these 3 files. So in order for it to be formatted the way that it was formatted, say here, I need to copy those files over. So you can do that in a couple of ways. You can use your files panel to navigate to your files, which to me is not a very easy way to go about doing it. I like to use Windows Explorer, or in a Mac system you would use whatever application you need to copy files. 230. Okay, so I'm looking for striped, no, what is it? SU styles, boilerplate, and respond. So SU styles, I'm holding down my control key, boilerplate, and respond. Those are my 3 files that I need to copy from the data files folder. And I'm going to copy them to my desktop, to my striped umbrella folder. Okay, so now when I come back to Dreamweaver and I look at index, I now have this. Now the banner's not there, and you can probably guess that we haven't copied that image over, so the banner isn't there. I'm going to go ahead and click on refresh down in the bottom so that I can see that those 3 files were copied over. And now I'm going to go back and I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to go back to my data files. I'm going to go to assets, and in step 2 on page 31 it says to copy SU banner and SU logo. So we copy SU banner and SU logo, and then we want to go to your root folder, assets folder this time, and paste. And voila! So now index has the image. Now I want to show you something. When I want to see what it would look like on a phone, because that's called responsive design, I just come down to my screen sizes down here, and I'm going to click on iPhone 4. Now notice that I got a different image. That's the SU logo. Okay, if I go to a larger screen resolution like a tablet or an iPad or a desktop view, I'm going to go full size here, I get the banner file. So we want to respond, and we'll kind of learn that as we go along, how to respond differently. And I'll take you into SU styles later on and show you how that's actually coded through media queries. So page 32 and 33 steps you through adding pages to a website through Windows or through Mac. So I don't think I'm going to bore you with me stepping through that. Maybe I'll just try one. Okay, so we want to be not in the assets folder. We want to right click and go new file. And the first one we want to do is about _us. Okay, so we're just creating some blank HTML files. And then in number 3, you would add in spa, cafe, activities, cruises, and fishing. And that is chapter 1. So take your time to read through it. Take your time to go through these examples. And if you run into anything that I didn't cover through this video, please let me know. I do want to just kind of come back to the assignments page and make sure that the assignments are kind of crystal clear. There's a site setup document too that runs through exactly what I did in a graphical format. So you're welcome to use that. Make sure that you complete always the striped umbrella examples. They're not handed in for credit, but what I just stepped through helps you prepare for those that are handed in for credit. So blooms and bulbs, Trip Smart, and coffee shop. And so it says skills review. Skills review is on page 34 and 35. Stepping through. Okay, exactly what you need to do. It's worth 5 points. The due date is Monday, January 23rd by midnight. And then we have Trip Smart, which is Project Builder 1, okay, which is on page 36. We do not work with Caroline's Creations, and we always work with the portfolio project. I guess I should update this to say project and not builder. And that's on page 39. So you always want to check this for the portfolio project, because I do clarify directions as well as modify some of the directions. So again, for this one, you want to make sure that you set up your site through a Dreamweaver, use all the connection information, create the storyboard, and answers those questions. Now the storyboard and questions, they get submitted to the Dropbox. Okay, and what you create for your storyboard for chapter 1 may not be how your website actually ends up planning out to be or ends up being. by the end of the semester. Okay, so that's the beauty, work in progress, and as you learn more, you might go ahead and say, oh, nope, I really don't want to do that page anymore. I want to do this page. And that we'll submit a final copy of the storyboard at the end of the semester as well. Okay, so if you have any questions of the assignments or anything with regards to maybe your Dreamweaver not working correctly, please let me know, and thank you.